Good morning, everyone. One of the weird things about being in ministry that you don't often really think about is how often you're in funerals. Even though I haven't preached a funeral before, I have been a part of a ton of funerals, whether it's doing the sound or, helping out in this way or that way. Most people my age might have been to 3, maybe 4 funerals, and, I'm like well over 50, and it's just one of those weird things that really shapes you and really makes you weird as a minister. And but I always think about one of the favorite verses that one of the pastors I served under would start a funeral with, and it's from Ecclesiastes, and it says, "A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. Frustration is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure." And his point, which I kind of experienced, is that when you go to funerals a lot, you begin to think about your life in terms of the eulogies that you hear. You begin to think of your life in terms of, what would people say about me when I pass away? And you begin to wonder, could I pretend to be Tom Sawyer one day and hear my own funeral? And it begins to kind of shape that question of, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? And you haven't really written your eulogy yet, I think I would encourage you to do that. And now what's amazing about this passage here is not about legacy. It's not about eulogies. Instead, it's kind of one of those day-to-day passages in Paul. But because Paul is sitting in jail writing this, waiting for Caesar to give him a thumbs up or a thumbs down, he is thinking a lot about his eulogy, and it really, really comes out. And so it's one of the amazing things that I love about Philippians is that when Philippians is not about something, Paul's energy and Paul's thoughts really come through. And you can really see how he's been shaped by the gospel. And it's just an incredible, incredible example. So let's read this passage together. It's Philippians 2, 19 through 30. "I hope in the Lord to send Timothy to you soon, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. I have no one else like him who will show genuine concern for your welfare. For everyone looks out for their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. But you know that Timothy has proved himself, because as a son with his father, he has served with me in the work of the gospel. I hope, therefore, to send him as soon as I see how things go with me. And I am confident in the Lord that I myself will come soon. But I think it is necessary to send back to you Ephaphroditus, my brother, co-worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. For he longs for all of you, and is distressed because you heard he was ill. Indeed, he was ill, and almost died. But God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but also on me, to spare me sorrow upon sorrow. Therefore, I am the more eager to send him, so that when you see him again, you may be glad, and I may have less anxiety. So then, welcome him in the Lord with great joy, and honor people like him, because he almost died for the work of Christ. He risked his life to make up for the help you yourselves could not give me. So, if you read this passage and you kind of put some things together, you can kind of picture a little bit of what's going on, right? So Paul is on his way to Rome and to spend time in house arrest. Luckily, he's not in like the worst jails that Rome could offer. He is in house arrest to make his case before Caesar that he is innocent. And so he has to pay for the house, pay for all the supplies, and pay for the soldier who's going to be chained to him. So like a rotation of soldiers that he all has to pay for. This is expensive. And so the Philippian church decides to further the gospel, we're going to help them out. And so they collect money for a while, and they send Epaphroditus and maybe a couple other people out to Rome to give him this gift. And on the way, Epaphroditus becomes sick. And he almost dies. But he does make his way to Rome, and there in Rome, Paul did more helping of Epaphroditus than Epaphroditus did for Paul. You know, he was now stuck helping Epaphroditus recover from his sickness, as opposed to Epaphroditus, serving and helping him. And so that might have delayed Timothy's plan, who was going to go around to a bunch of churches that Paul started, because Timothy had been with Paul for a while, and kind of encourage all the saints, and they were delayed a little bit. And so Paul decides, I'm going to send Epaphroditus to Philippi instead, and keep Timothy around me to help me out. And Timothy can go in a few months. But for these few months, I'm going to have send Epaphroditus and keep Timothy. And so he writes to kind of let them know. And he kind of gives this like, hey, change of plans, but also you should really know how much I think about these two people and the kind of legacy that they leave. You should really think about that. And for Epaphroditus, it might have been really encouraging because he must have felt like he failed his mission. He didn't get to help Paul as much as he thought. He was being sent home early. That's been like a failure. And for Timothy, what a great recommendation for him about this ministry that he's kind of starting out to go on alone for the first time. Or he hasn't been alone on this ministry for long because he's been with Paul most of the time. And so Paul uses this letter of recommendation to not just recommend to the Philippians, but also to encourage Timothy and Epaphroditus. And as he does that, his heart and his love just comes shining through. And so I want to be like Paul. As I think about my legacy, these are some of the things I want to be reflected in me like it's reflected in Timothy and Epaphroditus. I want my legacy to be how I show genuine concern for your welfare. That's what he says about Timothy. I hope in the Lord to send Timothy to you soon, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. I have no one else like him. He will show genuine concern for your welfare. When I think about that in my own life, I think of the pastor I had in Cortez, Colorado when I was just a kid. His name was Don Henderson. And he's not famous. He never will be famous. He wasn't that good of a preacher to be famous, but he showed a genuine concern for my welfare, for the welfare of my family. I think of countless times. I would just think I was a 4-year-old who thought he was called to ministry. I can imagine, the pastor just kind of chuckling behind the scenes about this kid who's asking him questions about being a pastor, and just kind of how silly that is. And yet, because he cared for me, he was willing and eager to be there and taught. In fact, he was the person who gave me my first razor and told me how to shave. But the biggest moment for me was when we were traveling to drop off our uncle and aunt. They were going to fly, and the nearest airport was like 4 hours away, and so we were about halfway there outside of Gallup, New Mexico, 2 hours or so into our trip, and our van breaks down on a Saturday. And we were too much in the middle of nowhere to call a tow truck or anything like that, and so we were stuck on the side of the road. And we were kind of without options, and so we called our pastor, hoping he would call somebody else to come and pick us up, someone with a truck. But instead, he got the church van, and he drove out himself in the church van, and he towed our van back on the back of the church van. And we got into town about 2 a.m, and he was up the next morning to preach. I just think about all that legacy that he left. He won't be famous, but his legacy of showing genuine concern is powerful and amazing, and something I want of my life too. Second thing I want my legacy to be is how I put Jesus first. And Paul's still talking about Timothy, says, "For everyone looks out for their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ." And it was funny to me reading the commentaries on that, because they were kind of figuring out, who's everyone that doesn't look out for Jesus' interests? Who is he talking about? And I was just thinking, yeah, no, it makes sense that everyone doesn't really look out for Jesus' interests. I know I've been challenged in our Wednesday night study, Experiencing God, how often the things that I do that are like my big things to do for God, like this is my example of how I look out for the interests of Jesus, are really not the things God wants me to do, but the things I make up so that I could look good in looking good for Jesus. And so I've been really challenged how much I do that everyone else would say, oh, he's looking out the interests of Jesus. And it turns out I'm really just being all about me and about my own interests and about my own wants. And I've been really challenged by this Experiencing God study to listen, to see God, hear God's voice, see where he's moving, to do what God wants me to do, and not just make up things for God that are really for me. And so I want my legacy to be is that I've learned that lesson. I don't think I've learned it yet. I still have that inner desire in me to make things about me. I would love it if one day I could really experience God because I put aside all my own interests and only look to Jesus. The third thing I want my legacy to be is I want my legacy to come from gospel partnerships. So you know that Timothy has proved himself because as a son with his father, he has served with me in the work of the gospel. And I gotta say, I am really excited about the future of Centerville Baptist Church because we have an outreach team. And our outreach team, we're actually going to meet today at James and Mary's, and over tacos, we're going to dream up and plan of new ways to partner together in the gospel, to share and go and do more outreach. I know I'm really excited. We're going to do the Cover Bridge Days. We're going to be in the parade and pass out popcorns and be part of the service. We got a booth in the fair, and we haven't figured out what we're going to do at the fair yet, but it's going to be awesome. And we got all these things coming up, and I am so excited about the fact that we are just going to have so many opportunities for you to partner in the gospel with us, and for us to be partners together in sharing the gospel. Now, you may be sitting here thinking, you just did a Memorial Day parade, and you just shared our information in this Memorial Day parade with a whole bunch of people, and I don't see anybody there. And my response to you is, I had a salad last week, and I didn't lose a single pound. I went to the gym a couple times in my life, and it did not help me either. I really think I should quit trying to be healthy. Die young, make a pretty corpse. That's going to be my goal. But yeah, I think gospel partnership and outreach isn't events. It isn't things. It's not parades. It's not booths. It's exercise. It's taking part with God, and it's directing our focus out of the walls of the church and into our community. In reality, I would love, because I'm interested in myself, that our church grows, because that would look good for me. But if I put the interest of Jesus first over mine, what I want more from these outreaches is that you get to exercise in gospel partnership more and more. That you get the chance to grow more and more as you leave the doors of these churches and serve. And hopefully you will get those habits through our little outreach events, that when someone comes up to you who asks you, well, why do you go to church? Well, what do you believe? Well, why should I believe in Jesus? You will have exercised that outreach muscle and that gospel partnership muscle long enough and strong enough that you can answer in a good and powerful way. So we would love to invite you to partner with us in the gospel more and more again. And let our legacy be the legacy of gospel partnership. 4, I want my legacy to be that I was a brother, co-worker, and fellow soldier. So I think it's necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus, my brother, co-worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger. And I love this, especially when we remember Epaphroditus probably thinks he failed. He probably thinks he didn't do enough for Paul. Yet Paul is saying, he's my brother, he's my co-worker, he's my fellow soldier. There's a great story when Michael Jordan scored his career high 69 points, which is just incredible in basketball. And there was a rookie on his team who that day made one shot and had 2 points. And, the reporters were interviewing everybody about how great it was to see Michael Jordan score 69 points and how incredible it is to see Jordan score 69 points. And this rookie said, I will always remember this as the day that Michael Jordan and I combined to score 70 points. I think that's great because we often think our contribution is so small, and it might be just a little bit. You might just walk a Memorial Day parade. You might just do some cleaning around the church. You might think that's all it is. But together with God, who's actually the one making all the points, together we're scoring 70. Together we can be that. And if our legacy is not some big story, if our legacy is how as a church we came together and we truly saw each other as brothers and co-workers, fellow soldiers, wow, we will have scored 70 points together. And then I want my legacy to be how I sacrifice financially for the ministry. Because I think it's necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus, my brother, co-worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. Part of the legacy is not just Timothy, it's not just Ephaphroditus, it's the Philippian church who bound together and supported the work financially. And I always get a little awkward. Well, I can't say always because I haven't actually preached about finances and given to God yet. But I whenever I think about it, I feel a little awkward to talk about that need financially. And one, it's because, I don't see who gives what. I don't see how much you give, and I prefer it that way. That's the way I want it. I don't want to know who you are and how much you gave. But I know that given the size of the church, and just the amount of money that does come in, it's impressive. Like, the amount, either somebody's a huge giver, or all of you are great givers, and it's probably a combination of it. And I don't want to seem like, when I'm asking you guys to commit a little bit more financially, that I don't appreciate that you are giving. And even if you're giving a little bit and it's all you can give, I don't want to pretend like that's not big, that's not amazing. And then the second thing that makes me a little embarrassed and a little nervous in talking about this is, whenever I think of a preacher asking for money, I think about a guy asking for next jet, private jet. The guys on TV asking to get money for their third house and their private jet and all those things. And I don't want to be like them. I don't believe in that, And so how do you say it's good to give financially and we need you to be invested in this church? And say, hey, that's really just because we need money to keep the lights on. You're not buying me a private jet. And I know I make $55,000 a year. And I know for some of you that sounds like a crazy amount for a pastor. And for some of you that sounds like way too little. And I would say it's too little, but hey, I'm selfish that way. Really, if I put Jesus' interest first, I would say that's too much. But I don't want you to feel like it's just for me. I want you to hear that we want to be on mission more and more. And we want to do good to those who come in and ask for help more and more. And the more you give financially, the more you get to be a part of that. The more we get to see God working through us. So please, if you haven't looked through your budget and you haven't thought about what can I give to God, to the church, and to our mission more, please consider that. If you can give more, if you can start giving, I think it can go a long way, especially from what the previous point was, is our outreach team is working. We are trying to do more to serve our community and get out in the community. And all those things require more and more financial investment. So, I want my legacy to be how I care about people, about how I put others first, about how we partner together, about the gospel ministry that we do together, and about how I give. Last, I want my legacy to be about how I honor other Christian heroes. And he says to the Philippians about Epaphroditus, he says, so then welcome him in the Lord with great joy and honor people like him. I really encourage you, look around the room. You see somebody who is leaving this legacy in this room, or at least is striving to. I'm sure you see someone who has cared about your welfare in a way that I don't know. I'm sure you see somebody who has partnered with you in sharing the gospel in an incredible way. Maybe you believe the gospel because that person shared the gospel with you. There may be somebody here who you just think, wow, they are such a great example of putting Jesus first. And maybe you know how much they give, because I don't know how much they give, but you appreciate that. And you say, that is incredible. If you could do one thing for me this week, would you go and buy a thank you note for that person that you see? Would you just write, hey, I see the incredible legacy that you leave. I want to be like you. I want to honor you. Would you just take a moment and recognize the incredible people in this room who really are leaving this kind of legacy that I just desperately want to leave? I know this room is filled with people who have an incredible legacy, whose eulogies will be rich and powerful and beautiful. And we recognize that in each other this week. And I think about one more eulogy. And it was really one person's chance. He knew he was dying, and he was going to share what he thought his legacy would be. And so as he sat the people around his table, his disciples around him, he took a bread, and he broke it, and he said, this is my body broken for you. And for that, with that for you, he was saying, I genuinely care about your welfare. He was saying, I am putting your interests ahead of my own. And he said, this is the cup of the new covenant in my blood. He says, I have such good news for you. You get to be a part of. I'm giving, not just financially, I'm shedding my blood for you. Jesus left this great legacy that I want to leave. And he showed us how to recognize it when he gave us communion. He showed us how he wants us to honor his legacy in this communion together. And the great thing about this communion is the word communion is not just remembering Jesus, but also realizing that we are in communion with all of God's people. That since Jesus broke that bread the first time, Christians have been doing it every week. And around the globe right now, there are people who are our co-workers, our brothers and sisters in Christ, reflecting on and honoring Jesus' legacy. So, I invite you to join me. What we will do is we will have you